what is manifesting and how can you take that first step to manifesting on a goal that you've set for yourself?
Well, the first step is really getting clear on what it is you really want. Is it something you want? Is it something your parents want for you? Is it something society wants for you? Because I found that if you truly are not in alignment with that, it's a lot more challenging to make anything happen because you have, I want it, I don't want it. I want it, I don't want it. So getting clear, and in order to get clear, you need to find ways to access that inner wisdom. And for me, it's always been meditation. For other people, maybe it's gardening is their meditation, or walking, whatever it is. But you need to be able to get into that state where you're calm and you are focused, and then you are clear, and then you move to the next step.
Barbara, it's so good to see you. I know Barbara, for all those that are listening, from my earliest days of trying to attract my husband. When I think about manifestations, and my husband, Zach, hates it when I say that because he's like, you did not manifest me. I existed long before you went to Barbara, but I went to you, Barbara, because I wanted to find the one. I wanted to find my life partner. I'd been doing everything under the sun. And then Jaya, one of my friends, was like, you have to go see Barbara. I went to Barbara. And, a few months later, I meet Zach, and he was everything that we had manifested. And then later on, I went with you with Alex. You helped us manifest those next steps for Ivy that got acquired. And then again, we were at House, and Alex and I were wrestling with what to do next with our chapter. We went to you, and you helped guided us. And so I always say, when people tell me what is a piece of your process that's unconventional? And I'm like, book an appointment with Barbara. She helps you manifest. But I know a lot of people don't believe in manifesting. And I think what we want to get out of today's episode is understand what are the tools that anybody, whether they believe in the concept of manifesting or not, how can you apply it to every day? And what's that first step that people can take?
Oh, absolutely. Well, first of all, I am so happy to be here with both of you because, as you said, I've known you both a long time. I totally forgot about you came to me to manifest your husband, actually.
Yes, you found me my husband. I stand by that.
Wow. And Jaya, the person who introduced you, just had a baby. So
I know.
Exactly.
Yes, so that's great. I'm glad that you asked me this question because I have been teaching this, as you know, for decades. And when I started teaching in corporate America, I had to be very careful the way I explained it. Now neuroscience agrees with me. So it's a lot easier now that we understand how the brain functions. So it's not magic. We all know it might feel magical, but it's not magic. It really is. If you understand how the universe works, if you understand how the brain works, there's certain things that are important for you to do in order to, quote, manifest what you truly want in your life. And there are steps to it. It's not, abracadabra instant, although that could happen occasionally. That's really not how it happens. It's really not a sprint. It's a marathon. It's a lifelong journey of creating and adjusting. So I'm really glad that you put it in those terms.
So talk to us about what's that first step of how, what is manifesting and how can you take that first step to manifesting on a goal that you've set for yourself, whether it's getting that ideal job, shifting careers, getting acquired, like Alex and I went to you for, or finding a husband. What is that first step for people to be able to take?
Well, the first step is really getting clear on what it is you really want. Is it something you want? Is it something your parents want for you? Is it something society wants for you? Because I found that if you truly are not in alignment with that, it's a lot more challenging to make anything happen because you have, I want it, I don't want it. I want it, I don't want it. It's like we're constantly sending text messages to the universe. And if they're constantly yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, how do you answer it? It's very challenging. So getting clear. And in order to get clear, you need to find ways to access that inner wisdom. And for me, it's always been meditation. For other people, maybe it's gardening is their meditation, or walking, whatever it is. But you need to be able to get into that state where you're calm and you are focused, and then you are clear, and then you move to the next step. So that's always, I love it. I have to
I definitely did not manifest this moment of these.
It was bound to happen. 4 recordings, like a kid had to come into frame at some point.
Well,
exactly.
That brings up a really good point.
But really quickly, Barbara, on that point of getting in that flow state, like while you're gardening or while you're meditating, are you thinking about like what it is that I want, or are you just feeling the feelings of being in that state? Like what are you doing?
Step one is how do you get to that place where you're feeling at peace and happy? Because stress can really counteract all of your ideas of vision, because then you get that inner saboteur talking. And, you have to get to that place where you're just feeling so calm that it doesn't matter if a kid walks in the middle of the podcast, you're still okay. You're creating, you're adjusting. It's life. We're not living on a mountainside right now in a monastery. We're living in the world. And as you know, one of the things I love doing is teaching people practical spiritual tools. They could do it on a subway. They could do it on a plane in an airport. We live in the world. We have to learn how to get in that state in, quote, real life. So then you get clear on what it is you truly want to bring in. And then it's really important, we talk about manifesting, but what people forget is it's a 2-prong solution, really. So one is you're putting out to the universe very clearly, what will it feel like? What is it like to have what you truly want? And the other part is being able to receive it. So many people have a glass ceiling for receiving. They're only allowing themselves to receive a certain amount of money, a certain amount of love, a certain amount of joy. So it's important to train yourself to open up to being able to receive. I think I told you, I had a client once who really was desperate to create money. She wanted to manifest money. And we did a lot of work. And guess what? She was in the park in New York, in Brooklyn, actually, sitting at a bench. And she's
Barbara, don't tell my secret stories.
Not your story.
She'll visualize that.
Yeah, really. So visualize, you're sitting on a bench, you look down, there's a bag under the bench, pull it out, and it's filled with $100 bills. Now, I'm not making this up. I truly am not making this up. And guess what? She so freaked herself out that maybe it was a drug deal. Maybe people were watching. She'd take the money and they're going to go home and shoot her. She told herself such a crazy story that guess what? She left the money. She didn't take it. So here she is wanting to manifest, getting in the state, putting it out. The universe gave her something that most people don't get, a bag of money, and she wouldn't take it.
That's so funny.
That's part of the process. It's like wanting a job and you get the call, okay, you're going to be VP. And you go, oh, I'm not really ready yet. I need to go back and get another degree.
Yeah, right. So you have to be ready to receive. So my takeaway from this, Barbara, is one, be very clear on your desire, understand what that is. And, there are techniques and meditation practices to be able to identify what that is. Second is to visualize and see yourself with this desire actually happening. And the third thing is to be open to receiving. So open to the goodness and the things that you've desired from the universe.
Right. And be aware of, surprises and things. I always say this or something better, that I tell that to everyone, because you might think that your dream job or whatever is A, and all of a sudden the universe gives you B or C that's even better than you ever could have imagined.
One thing that I've recently had trouble, like using the tips of your manifestations, right? Like feeling as though I already have it. There's still this little voice in the back of my head that plants, like that sees it not happening. Like to see, like literally, like I'm seeing the fears and feeling more of the end goal that I want not actually happening. So how do you quiet that? How do you
that's definitely part of the process, is taming your inner critic. That self-sabotaging part, that the bottom line is it wants to keep you safe. So somehow it's afraid if you had exactly what you wanted, you wouldn't be safe, or you'd get hurt or whatever. And, for some people, it's an easy process. You notice it and you go, oh, okay, that's not true. That was my mother, my father. That was this experience I had a long time ago. But for most people, it takes time to work through that. It's called shadow work, or those inner critics. And there are things you can know, and what you know, it's only part of you. I think that's the easiest thing to start with. It's just part of you. It's like you're at a party and somebody comes up and says to you, don't do it, this is bad. And someone else says, oh no, go for it. Who are you listening to? So you have to also start, what radio station are you listening to? What webcast are you listening to? What podcast? You're not going to listen to all and believe them. And that's a process that is very important. I'm glad you brought it up, because that sabotages people all the time. And it also,
so it's acknowledging it.
So
how do I do it? So I basically, when I hear that inside critic being like, you're not going, like your next thing you do is not going to be as big as you want it. It's basically seeing that and acknowledging that.
Right. So see and acknowledge it. For some people, they do something like they'll go cancel, like you're deleting something in a computer, or that's your opinion, like you're talking to an actual person. Oh, that's your opinion. It's not mine. So you want to find ways, or one of the things I like to say when that voice comes up is like, okay, up until now, that might have been true, but it's not true anymore. And that's enough to kind of detach from that loop of telling you that you're not good enough, or you can't do it, or it's not possible. You want to find ways that really break that circuit. And then you can do deeper work to find out where it comes from. But immediately, you just do something very simple.
And we're in such a culture of having it all, having a family, having kids, having the perfect job, having all this money. And there's that pressure, especially as women, to have it all and to do it all. How do you get clear on what you want? How do you get clear on what desire you want to go after?
So the first thing I'm going back to, you need to get in a place where you're calm, and that just even like right now, just take a moment just to remember something that made you feel fabulous. It could be anything. It could be holding your kids. It could be dancing. It could be gardening. It could be swimming. And just really be in that energy where you're feeling gratitude to life and you're really, really happy. Immediately, you're opening up room for inspiration, and then to start to go, what do I really need right now? What would make me feel great? What does success look like? I think people don't ask themselves that question enough. Sometimes success just means, being with your children at home, and it doesn't mean having a multi-billion-dollar business. Other times it means, doing different things. You don't always have to have everything at the same time. This thinking that you could have everything at the same time, I think is unrealistic, to be very honest.
Absolutely. And I think that's part of the problem, right?
Right. So then you look at who's telling you this. Who decided that, you need to be super mom and super business person and super healthy and super loving and self-caring and all of that? Somebody decided that and you bought into it. So it's like, who's talking and why do you want to believe them? So again, it's getting clearer on I think that's a good exercise. What does success mean to you right now? It could be different in a month. It could be different in a year. Success is different to me now than when my son was living at home and I was a single mom and he was little. It's a different thing because he was much more in the picture for me then. So really ask yourself that, what does success mean to me? You want to put it kind of, and also back to what you said, Lee, visualizing is one thing. but it's so important to be able to feel what it feels like.
So give me an example, so like let's say it's to build like your dream company, right? So I would go into the feeling of like how it feels to walk in the door of my office every single day, how it feels to be.
So I would close your eyes and just really feel, what does it feel like to go into work? Who's working with you? Who's supporting you? How do you interact with the people in your company? How do you interact with clients? What does it look like? Are you working remotely? Are you working in an actual place? Are you traveling? How are you feeling in the morning? Are you excited about going to work? Can you just see, the money coming in and people excited because you're giving them such value that they're telling you what a great, thing it is to work with you. So just to really feel what it feels like, all this, as much as you can, the senses, because when you're tasting it, what does it taste like, smell like, feel like, look like? Then you get a real multidimensional picture. It's the same in being in a relationship. What does it feel like being with this partner? How do they treat you? How do you treat them? Are you laughing? Are you traveling? So the more you can just be in it now, the more real the brain reads it, by the way. And when the brain reads it, it's constantly, absolutely every day. You don't have to do it for a long time. And I would not do it if you're super stressed out. So if you're super stressed out, even take a few deep breaths, like just say you're stressed out right now. So just take a moment and just breathe in through the count of 4 through your nose and just breathe out through the count of 4 through your mouth. And do this a few times, breathing in, breathing out, and then just put your hands together like this and just feel what it feels like to have your fingers touch each other. Is it warm? Can you feel the ridges? Just really be in your body. Just take a moment to just really connect to that. Nothing else, just feeling what it feels like. And now imagine what it's like to be in that relationship or in that business or whatever it is. It doesn't take a long time. It just takes a few moments.
No, and it is important. We're always running, we're always rushing, we're always building, we're being pulled in a million directions online with our phone and devices. So taking that moment is a critical part of the process. And we've seen it with Lee when we come to you, or we did it, Lee and I have sessions with each other where we, do these, we manifest what we want for our next chapter. And I think incorporating it on a daily basis, like you recommended, is really what made it go into motion and what made things actually happen.
Right. Those small, consistent steps is what builds that foundation. And then you become more confident. And when you become more confident, you take more risks. And when you take more risks, you talk to more people. And then suddenly you're talking to someone who might want to invest in your company. Or suddenly you're talking to someone who wants to introduce you to your next partner. It's more of just building that inner confidence and that self-care, taking care of yourself is so important.
Yeah, no, but Barbara, on that point though, like Alex and I often talk about how frustrating we find it when people have these dreams, these visions, but they don't get fucking going, right? They're so stagnant. They're just like, they're just thinking about it. And so I think I'd be curious to know, when you're manifesting, that doesn't mean you're not doing things outside of that manifestation. Like, what are your thoughts? Like, where does manifesting fit into the rest of what you have to do to hit the goals you want?
I think what you explained, what you just said, was more daydreaming than manifesting. Everyone can daydream winning the lottery or walking in and finding their next partner, but you also have to take some action. There's an old quote, trust in God, but tie up your camel at night. It's like, I could teach you intuition, but I'm not going to put a blindfold over you and tell you to walk across Fifth Avenue blindfolded just because you're intuitive. You have to take action. You're partnering whether you want to call it the universal mind or what cosmic, whatever you want to call it. It's not at all religious, it's just, it's a universal mind, and you're kind of cutting out things from this universal mind and saying, okay, this is what I'm choosing here. This is what I'm choosing. But yes, you need to take action, even if it's tiny, tiny action. So make one phone call, listen to one podcast.
That's so important, because people think of manifestation as this, divine intervention, things just magically happen. But there are steps, there are actions that you need to take to move the needle towards your desire. And it's not just something that happens out of nowhere. Now, I was just going to say, what are some of the pitfalls? What are some of the things that people are not doing right when they think of manifesting or vision boarding? What are some of the things you've seen that are commonly made and actually not helping the cause?
Well, for me, not helping the cause is not having any, goals, and you need to have some goals based on this vision. So what are some of the things that you are going to actually do? You could also ask the universe to help you, but you do need to take steps, and then you do need to acknowledge that you've taken the steps. So that's why, I don't even know if I shared it with you. I keep a jar that I call a success jar. And every time I take a step towards a goal, even if it's a little step, I put a dime, a quarter, a euro, whatever in it. And when it fills up, I use it to really do something nice for myself. And you could do it in a team. I've done it with companies, and the whole team does that. So at the end, when it's full, I don't know, they have a pizza day, whatever it is. So you have to also acknowledge. So there's the creative process is about creating and adjusting, assimilating what you've created, and then completing it. You have to have all of that. It's like if I'm writing a book, there's a point where I have to say it's done. Otherwise I'll be editing it for years. So you have those different steps, and you also have to ask yourself, what could I do alone and where do I need help? Some things you can't do by yourself, especially if you're talking about growing a business, or if you're looking for a partner and you don't know people and you're afraid, maybe you need someone to write an ad for you or introduce you to people, or, you might be the tech person and you need a good marketing person. It's not everything that we can do by ourselves. And I don't know why we think we can, so you pull in different people.
That makes sense. And I think that's a big thing for us too, Lee. We've always learned from our journey that, first of all, we had each other always, which I think is a huge support. And a lot of people don't have a partner to build, but just really surrounding yourselves with the team or your village that will propel you to the next level.
And I also think one thing, Barbara, that you gave Alex and me is that in our challenging times, whether it's with Ivy or with Clay, I think the manifesting process, the goal set, like believing that if we really felt it, right? Like felt as though we already had it, then those feelings would ultimately lead us to where we'd have to be. It gave us the drive to keep on pushing. It made us very persistent. It made us like a dog with a bone towards that goal, because we thought to ourselves, like, we're going to get to that finish line because we are confident that we would.
Yes. Again, it's that building that confidence and also being really clear on the essence of what it is you wanted. You were very clear on, what you wanted just for Ivy or whatever, but some people aren't that clear. They know they want a new job. So I would say, and I once was transitioning in jobs, and I didn't know exactly what my next job would be, but I knew I wanted to travel within 20 minutes from my house because I was a single mother. I wanted it to be creative. I didn't want to have to wear a suit to work. I had all these, I wanted a network of supported people, all of this. And it wound up that I was offered a job being a casting director on a TV show, which I had never done in my life. But it filled every single thing I had put down.
So that's really interesting. You knew what you wanted to feel. You didn't have to go into the specifics of what that job would be, but you knew you wanted to be fulfilled, work with people, feel a certain way. And that's what attracted that job.
Exactly. And when that job came to me and I had never done it before, the person who offered it to me said, don't worry about it. I know you'll be perfect. I'll teach you everything you need to know. Just don't tell anyone you never did it. True story. And it started for me at like a 12-year, 15-year, whole cycle in television. But I started out not planning on moving into TV. I had been in the fashion business, so I had no idea that I was going to transition, but it was exactly what I wanted. Exactly.
No, it's funny you say that about like, it reminds me of when I went to you about manifesting my husband. You didn't have me think about like, my husband has to be X, Y, and Z. The whole meditation you had me record with you that I would listen to long after the sessions were how I felt when that partner walked through the door, how I felt eating dinner with them. And we didn't put any, we didn't describe what my partner looked like. It was all about how I felt. We made it so much more about me than that person I wanted to attract. And I often think about that because that what I manifested is exactly how I feel with Zach, which is pretty extraordinary.
Because that really is, without being woo-woo, that is the law of attraction. You just think of them. No, you really just think of a magnet right now, and they get attracted. You think of, batteries have a plus and a minus sign. That's really what we're working with, that energy. And the brain reads that as real. That's something that people don't always understand. The brain reads that as real. So if you were visioning and imagining how you feel, the brain is going, oh, okay. That's what I'm looking for. And it kind of sends out these feelers to see who's kind of vibrating with that feeling. And then they come into your, life, and then you have to say yes, obviously.
So is part of it once your brain is wired to be attuned to that feelings and to these emotions, once the opportunity comes, your brain is more reactive in a way, is more understanding of that attraction.
And more open to receiving it. Yeah, absolutely. Truly. And, we could tell you all the magic stories that happen manifestation, but it's not really magic. It's that the people really believed that it was possible. And again, it's that create and adjust part too. I mean, there always are going to be, things that get in your way. It's just like, you plan a beautiful outdoor picnic and it rains. That doesn't mean you can't still have a nice picnic. You have to just create differently. So you also have to really learn how to deal with those things that come in your way that could derail you, so that you don't give up. That's another thing. It's so easy to give up and sometimes people, actually the research shows that most people give up right before they're going to get what they want.
That makes sense. What about for the people that are a little bit shy with what they want? Some people know they want to build a company. Some people know they want to meet their partner. Some, I find, will sometimes struggle to set a high goal for themselves. And, I'll often find myself wanting to kind of push them to think bigger. What would you recommend for someone who's a little bit shy, who doesn't, who's almost scared to ask for too much?
Again, it's that glass ceiling. So there are techniques and there are tools to help people overcome their internal glass ceiling. But as a friend or as someone who knows someone, you just encourage them to take a slightly bigger step than they're comfortable with. It doesn't have to go from here to there. It can go from here to here, and let them get comfortable with thinking a little bit bigger, and then a little bit bigger, and then a little bit bigger. And soon it's sort of like teaching people piano. A lot of times when you're taught piano, the teacher pushes you up to something that you're not comfortable with before you're, quote, ready. And then once you learn that more extensive piece, you go back to the earlier piece and it's a piece of cake. So you start getting used to slightly being out of your comfort zone, but you don't want to scare someone because then they'll stop altogether. So if, like you said, if they're, going for a job interview and, make up a figure that, they're comfortable just say with 100,000 and you think they should be getting 200, tell them to ask for 125, let them at least move into it. And then when they're comfortable with that, then they could ask for 150 and that, you just move it on.
Alex and I, right, we're embarking on our next thing. We don't know what that thing is. We know, right, we want to build another company. We know we learned a lot of lessons with the last one that we don't want to bring into this new chapter. What would be your recommendation for Alex and I to even narrow in on what is that company? Is it, again, just going back to where, like, how we feel on this next venture?
Well, I would take you out of your environment for a moment so you're not around your family and your kids and you're not distracted, and go someplace where you
Are you saying a vacation on the beach with a margarita? Because I'm all for that.
you know,
you can come too, Barbara.
yeah, you need to get out of your normal environment,
Yeah.
even if it's just for, a half a day or a day, and just kind of let yourself really brainstorm and see what is next. Otherwise, you're just revamping the old.
Lee, we did that. You recommended that years ago. We did a full day in New York City. We went to the Museum of Ice Cream. We went to a Broadway show. Our brains were exploding from all the creativity and the experience. And it did help us take that day off from work, off from family, and really think through, what do we want?
What's next? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to give yourself some time, especially when I look at the two of you. You've created a lot already. It's not like this is your first venture. So you're already, you can create, the two of you work well together. And now it's like, okay, what's next? I mean, the truth is, who would have thought there'd be goat yoga, when you're talking about certain things? Who would be, I mean, seriously, who would have thought that, everybody is, going into AI now on just a normal thing, I mean, there's so many things we never could have conceived of.
But I guess, would you say though, when Alex and I are like taking a step back from our everyday to try to start thinking about what is next, are we thinking concretely on what is next? Maybe that's goat yoga, or is it more thinking about how we feel? Like that's what is that real step?
Yeah, I would start more with the bigger picture. Is what kind of company are you trying to create? You don't have to know what the product is, maybe, but, is there something, like if I said to both of you, which you have now with your podcast, you could speak on something that was really near and dear to your heart and millions of people would be listening. What would you want to say? Because that's something then that's really important to you. And if it's important to you, maybe that's a clue on what your next thing might be or incorporate. Because, it's the purpose and the passion that come in. And you've done things that have helped people's lives. So, what's the next thing that you want to put out? What's your legacy going to be? Ask yourself those kind of questions and then start to see what starts to come up. Because, for me, every time I do that kind of a thing, it always comes back for me of practical spiritual tools, spiritual alignment, teaching people about different cultures. But you could do that in many different ways, So get clear first on what that is. That's really, what is your passion right now? And it could be very different from when you started your other companies.
Yeah, and I feel like when we reflect on our past journey, very often we reflect on how we felt and what didn't feel right or what didn't sit right. And a lot of it has to do with our emotions, and what we don't want to bring into the next journey has to do with that.
Absolutely. I'm glad you said that. I was just listening to my friend Lavinia this morning, and she is one of the founders of Equinox Gym, and she's creating something new now called Move Joy, which I'll introduce you all. But one of the things she said when someone asked her what was like the biggest mistake you thought you made, when you were creating, and she said, not listening to my intuition, listening to too many other people when they might not have known more than me. So you want to start to trust, you to know. Yes, I'm not saying you can't get technical information or marketing information, but you to know and trust your guidance, your feeling, your intuition. And from that place, then you could build your team and bring in people.
That resonates with me so much. And we actually, Lee and I just talked about this, because the younger version of ourselves would have been a little bit insecure, not really trusting our gut. And, I think there's a lot of that in women, especially young women, founders, entrepreneurs, business owners, where we don't trust our gut. We think that we need to seek out advice on X, Y, Z. And I think we've reached the point in our careers where actually, we do trust our gut more than ever.
Yeah, which is so important. And again, that doesn't mean you won't bring in other people to do different parts for you. A client of mine who has these slumu experiences. I don't know if you know it. If you don't, for your children.
Oh, do I know slumu? Oh, yes, we've been a few times.
They're by the time this goes on, they would have opened in LA, and they included a room with singing bowls. Now, in a million years, who would have ever thought of that with slumu and children? But it's like, why not? And they trusted their intuition, and they found someone to do it. So yes, these are all learned skills, by the way, and it's going back to what we started in the beginning. This is not magic. However, you need to learn how to do these things. And it's not that they're hard. They're just no one ever taught you, so you don't have to do it. And the more you do it, the more confident you'll be with it. It's like any skill. It's learning, just to swim or paddleboard or be in the Olympics or, whatever the skill is. Learning to work on a computer is always a point where you're insecure and it takes you longer to do it. And then you develop the competency. So the same with building intuition and learning how to manage. It's learned skills. They really are. They're very teachable, learnable.
How do you track progress? So you're starting this journey where you're reflecting on what you want, but then how do you make sure you're on track?
Look at your life. What's going on in your life? Your life is always a good reflection. And I don't mean the world, because the world right now is chaotic. We all know that. But your own personal life, what is going on? Are you healthy? Are people around you happy? Are you receiving love? Do you have enough money? To really look at some of the basics, go back to, in a way, Maslow's basics in psychology. Do you have the basics covered? And then what about the other stuff? Are you having fun? Do you laugh? So you want to really use your own life as a standard of measurement. And you always judge yourself on your own performance. You can, I don't know who said it, but you can never outperform your own self-image. So if your self-image is small, you can never ever overcome that. So you want to expand that and then expand that and expand that. Having a partner, of course, always helps because you can mirror each other and you can give yourself good feedback, give each other good feedback. It's always good to have somebody who's a good feedback partner. And a good listening partner. You might just want someone who listens and doesn't tell you what to do, just so you can express yourself. But, and to take like an inventory, an assessment. Every month is a good time to do it. Okay, what worked, what didn't work? I like that better than what's right or wrong because it's less harsh to the body. But you can always write what's working, what isn't working, and take an inventory. And see, and the things that aren't working, then you want to make new choices and know that you have the ability to make choices. That's in training your brain, by the way. So if something goes in a way that you don't like and you're not just reactive, you stop for a minute, do whether it's cancel or whatever, and then make a new choice and take a step towards a new choice. You're training your brain that no matter what happens, you can be in control, you could be the predominant creative force in your life, and that you have power. Otherwise, you move into victim powerlessness. And it's training your brain.
So something along those lines, for both of our companies, when we're at crossroads and we really wanted something big to happen with them, and especially with Clay, where we didn't, right, like it required a very big pivot. We didn't know what that end result would be. I would always write down the end result that I wanted as though in the present tense, right? As though it was happening, right? And I did that also with Ivy when we wanted something really big. I'd often write in my journal, like all these present tense sentences of all the outcomes I wanted with Ivy. And I'd be curious, is that a form of manifestation in a way?
Absolutely, because Yeah, because you're feeling it. If you're going, you know, Ivy is a thriving business with great partners, you're already feeling that you're working in a company that has great partners. Yes, that's part of it, is how the language that you speak to yourself is important, really important. So saying, you want abundance, I am abundant. And it can mean different things, abundance of love, abundance of health. Do you have enough money today to buy food? Versus, do you have multi-million dollar, resources to take your business to the next level? Yes. Really acknowledging and then knowing that the brain doesn't like discrepancies. So if you're already affirming, I am running a successful company, I have great ideas, and the quote reality is it hasn't happened yet, the brain wants to find ways to make it happen. It doesn't like that discrepancy. So it's like, how do you focus on what is the real? Because you don't want to lie to yourself, but really know that you already have what you desire. You're holding both at the same time. Robert Fritz, who was one of my early teachers, used to call it creating a structural tension, not a psychological tension. Being honest about where you are, but really being clear about what your vision is. And then it's like a rubber band, it has a lot of power if you let it out. Whereas if you're not holding your vision or you're lying to yourself about where you are, the rubber band gets very wobbly. It doesn't have any power anymore. So again, these are techniques. You two have done this for a very long time. So it's ingrained in you. And I'm sure you're teaching your children, because children are great at this, by the way.
But especially our friends. And I know we're almost at time, but I'm reflecting on even a conversation I had with my like best friends 2 nights ago, she's fantastic, like truly incredible, right? And she's trying to find her life partner, and she's like sabotaging herself. And I'd just be curious to know, and I know this is very off topic from building a startup, but in many ways it's, finding the love of your life is very same as finding, building the business you want, because it's all about creating the life you want. What are those, like, if you were to leave any listener with, who's looking for love or looking for that right, like building the next company or that next chapter, what is it, Barbara? Like, what is that one tool, that one motto, that you think that is just really powerful?
You need to be gentle with yourself. You need to forgive yourself for the mistakes you think you're making. Someone once said a mistake is just take one. Just think, then you have take 2, take 3. We're so, especially women, are so hard on themselves that you stop yourself by being mad at yourself. So literally put your hands around yourself and say, I'm sorry. That was mean. I didn't mean to be so mean. Let's start all over. The brain doesn't know and the body doesn't know, by the way, the difference between you apologizing to it and someone else. It just feels the feeling. It feels good to have someone say, I'm sorry. So for those, which are very common, people sabotaging, whether it's their career or their business, to encourage them to be gentle with themselves. And up until now, that's what they did. So now it's time to make some other changes, and then again, they might need to really go and take a look at, why are they sabotaging themselves? I had a client once who really, again, wanted a successful business, wanted to travel, do all this stuff. And she only reached a certain level. And when we were working together, she finally realized that in her family, the only way to be successful or have money is if someone died. And it was so ingrained in her, she was terrified that if she became successful, someone would die. And when she realized that was the energy she was carrying, and she, did work around letting it go, suddenly things just started flowing for her and became incredibly successful and married the man of her dreams.
Amazing. Wow, Barbara, that's incredible. And you're obviously so good at giving advice and guiding people on their journey. Before we wrap up, I would love to know, what's one piece of advice that you've received lately or, in the last year that you think our listeners would appreciate?
Some advice that I've received. Be grateful. Really, every day, start your day off with gratitude because it changes how you feel. And then from that place, it's so much easier to take the action that you need to take to create the kind of life that you want.
Love that.
I love that. Well, I'm grateful for this conversation with you today, Barbara. I'm grateful for your time.
Likewise.
And I'm grateful to you, Alex, too. While I look at the screen, I'm like, these two people I'm really grateful for. So there you go. That's my gratitude. And I do feel better saying that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm grateful for both of you. And I love being able to share this, as you know. So thank you for making
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara.